machine memory is synonymous with human memory. Now, humans are notorious for forgetting about the fifth or the sixth thing, right? And after 3 weeks, we kind of forget about everything. Whereas a computer could be a perfect memory, theoretically, which we don't want.
It could be even worse that let's say a scale is developed by 30 questions. You don't remember what you answered 50 questions above the one that you answered.
Yeah.
The other one I would think, I don't know, is like with this batch, whatever it means, is it then ordered or does it simultaneously answer 10 questions?
Yeah.
So like
if batch mode is on, then it goes. It does.
So the system does really
it still steps
one by one and not simultaneously.
Just batch.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like if you
What
did
would happen if you set up 100 agents all the same and got them to answer concurrently?
That's what that's what the request handle is doing.
Yeah.
It's the same way. So when you put out this thing, some people in the room who have run a survey before, like Maria or Katie here, you'll notice sometimes that agent 1 or agent 10 responds before agent 1.
yeah.
Agent 1 and 10 got the thing at the same time. It's the same idea as when we go out door to door or whatever, we send out the survey. Some people are quicker, or some people have. Some people struggle to understand the message and take a bit longer to respond. Some people try a couple of different ways to answer the question, but they get it wrong each time, or they just completely go off whack and give up. And they say no. And we see the same sort of behaviours in an agent context.
In humans, by the
It's
way.
also interesting to see whether you see planning fallacies. Planning fallacy.
This thing's going to take me, so yeah. So I'm putting it off, I'm procrastinating, maybe. But I mean, there is one of the things that, I was at a tech conference last week, and one of the key challenges with some of these models at the moment is actually trying to get these things to slow down before they respond, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you give it a bit of time to think, reflect, okay, before it just jumps off and, okay. So just, think about it, digest.
What's different in terms of, do they read digest better?
I think it's to do with the React stuff, like it's about interpreting sort of intentions, and I think if you keep them in that loop longer, they do a bit better of a job of understanding because they're okay, what's the intent, how should I respond, what's the intent, if I can't find a congruent one of that, then match my intent of responding to the user's intent, then it'll just keep.
Couldn't a risk if they start pleasing more? They start with this kind of second order beliefs much more? If you keep them in the loop longer? Because you don't want that. You don't want to have second order beliefs.
There's a sweet spot. There's a sweet spot, yeah. But if you let it too long and you keep it going around, and it gets lost and it breaks and it fails, or it goes off on a different place. So there's a real sweet spot here somewhere there. I don't know how honestly don't know how they're going to do this, but to get it to respond, think first, but not too long. Same thing as a human. Don't overcook it. Stop. You just go with it. What you have now, but there's a stopping rule problem. Okay, that's the one going too long, trying to overanalyze or whatever. Or there's one that's too quick and you just run off without sort of, hey, you should probably open your eyes before you run, right? That sort of thing. So
What about
anyway, I digress.
System latency. There's system latency. Issues with
Latency.
You've got 1,000 agents scheduled. The shell of the operating system has got to look at that, and 500 of those agents want to look in the same data set, right? So now you're constrained by data access.
Yeah, it'll be like request.
Is this an issue?
Oh, we got like request handling on our sort of side, so you might just try put them through as quick as you can, but if you get knocked back, okay, wait 5-10 seconds, whatever, try it again. There's a request handler, which relates back to that. Remember, we have the number of requests, 5 number of requests, okay? If I increase that, I don't actually factor that into my, my cost estimation, okay? So if I have 10 retries, my cost might blow out 10 times. If it turns out that I got everyone in the loop, and that would be amazing. If you can get everyone in the loop, please tell me, because it'd be really interesting to see if you can break everything. That's awesome. That'd be really interesting to see why. If anyone breaks it, yeah, please let us know. It would be interesting. But you know, coming back, you know, avoiding when you're writing your questions and your answer instructions, you know, how exactly what sort of format. Okay, again, think about. I think I said this one to Soho in a different context about prompt or token size. Okay, I'm trying to minimise the tokens going in. Okay, so like in the sense of, you know, they're responding to this set of token, okay? And if I've got some tokens here towards this end that may be not so relevant, okay, they might be pulling this into the equation, okay? So I want to keep my tokens as small as possible. That means I also spend less money as well. So what do I say that? Clarity, precision, okay? So, you know, keep your answers short, concise, or your question and your answer instructions short, concise. You don't need to be sort of, you know, so, you know, bringing in everything where it's sort of you keep it quite precise in that sense. Consistency sort of talks about if you're swapping out words or whatever, and you're trying to do this like survey or scale development sort of stuff. You change one thing at a time, ceteris paribus sort of idea, I guess, roughly. And then scalability, you know, in terms of the back-end work that you got to do to clean this thing up, answer instructions, okay? If I'm asking to give me a open-ended text or response, or yeah, what about this one? Please provide a detailed narrative of your approach, decision points, outcomes, okay? If I ask this question here, it's quite wide and open, okay? That means I've probably got to do a bit more work in trying to clean it up or scrape the data out of it afterwards, okay? So the answer column, I haven't given it much guidance on exactly how to answer this question, okay? So that means I've got to do a bit more work in cleaning it up on the other side. Maybe if it's a yes/no one, okay, do you, maybe decision points, you know, list 5 decision points. Even then, that's a slightly bit easier than just saying decision points, right? So now I look for 5 decision points, and that gives me, you know, so just thinking about how you're going to feed the answers according to your answer instruction. Okay, how do I feed those answers back into my analysis? If I've got to do a buttload of work to clean it up first, that's okay. You might use rejects or whatever to extract what you need out of the answer instructions, but sometimes you want to make it easier and you want to say, yes, no, is this thing, is this part of this information? Is it yes, no? Is it present? Yes, no. Is Anna Maria? Is it exit, voice, loyalty? Okay, give me one of the 3.
Yeah, I have a question that how much do you have to specify what is voice? Or like how much you specify in the sense the question? Like in my sense, for example, instead of saying say voice, maybe they don't know what is it.
Yes.
I say, please tell me if you would complain to your supervisor or you would leave the group.
This talks a little bit to the comment right at the start. We talked about the scale development stuff. So maybe have a look at the critic function, yeah? So the idea is like, hey, is this thing that I'm passing you in, does it make sense? Tell me what it means, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Or you could be explicit and you can say, e.g., you know, so here's voice, e.g., here's some examples of some actions. But Benno looks like he's got something else to say.
Yeah, I mean, be careful that your voice means you can express anything. If you just narrow it down for complaints, even if complaints make sense in the environment, you narrow it down a lot. So make sure you're open enough. That voice in the end is providing feedback or being able to express yourself. And
So like,
if it's a negative situation, you're negative, but it also can be something positive.
do you explain that in the answer?
If you say you can express complaints, you need to play around with being as open as possible. Voice is the ability for an expression, for expressing yourself. successful with them. And on another point, I was wondering whether it would be interesting to do play around with short-term and long-term. Like for example, you take you take the Hilda, and then you look at life event shots. Well, you know, that's and then you usually have this kind of problem with the Hilda that it's like a 1 year delay. So you could actually start asking SurveyLM in terms of how they feel a week, a month, 2 months, 3 months. So till you reach the point of the time of the Hilda, and then you compare how close is the value that we have the SurveyLM with the Hilda one.
That's a major issue that I've got with the well-being.
Yeah, based on the characteristics.
Forecasting.
So you calibrate
Yeah. Based on the last
based
round.
on the Hilda, on the Hilda information, and then you start filling all those dots up to the point and see whether the point of the Hilda is. But then you can say, hey, you can actually fill in a lot of things.
You hope that it works.
For years,
Exactly.
for years we've been trying to model anticipation.
Yeah, but that one we can do that. Well, see whether
We've got quarterly data, by the way. The problem with the self-reported data in things like the Hilda on quarterly shocks is somebody asks you, in which quarter over last year did your child die? You can probably remember that, right? But if you ask somebody else, which quarter did you move house or something, you could end up in the wrong quarter, and particularly where the event is near the transition. So it's the old sea motion drop, right? But if you think you can actually do
Okay, hopefully that works. Oh, lol. Okay, you guys hadn't hit anything. Okay.
I've had my computer on.
Okay. Thanks, Katie. Okay. Just kind of good honorary spec. Because there was a point here. Just to clarify on that last question here. So again, clarity, precision. So are the things that you're saying in question or your answer instruction, is it the thing that the agent actually responds to, or does it actually perceive it? Okay. Like here, describe your strategy in negotiating a critical business deal. Okay, strategy, e.g., in brackets, strategy, e.g., XYZ component of strategy that you're interested in. So for you, okay, tell me if you do exit, voice, loyalty, e.g., okay, and then go look at the original Hirschman theory, and pull out exactly what the definition they provided. Okay, you could do that to make sure that they're exactly sure where it is. Yeah,
This is the
yeah, you could if you wanted to be
question ID
100%
and
sure.
question instruction, right?
Yeah. Okay. And then yeah. Okay. Cool. Sounds like we got that one. So rightio. So now speaking a little bit, we've talked about a couple times context of detail, context of context, how much to add. Yes. Do I want to go lots of detail? Okay, enhance context with the scenario. Yes, okay, yeah, I want to bring in more context where possible, yep, but what are the key elements and what exactly to add? If you think of it like a math equation and you go back to like the that Einstein rule or rule of thumb, whatever, make things as simple as possible without being sort of overly simple, right? Can you get away with this one versus this one? Do you really need to go here? You need 2 whole sentences to say the key elements of this. Critically, if you think about creating out of this, okay, extracting out of this, what are the actual sort of manipulations you're doing? Or like what's you think of a DAG, the directed acrylic graph, or whatever they call them again, like or a structural equation model. What's the very simple story you're trying to tell? So earthquake, okay. Team limited time and resources. You only save one. Something about a elderly scientist but they have vital knowledge. You know, what are the key parts here that you need to bring out? Do I need all these descriptors, things like that? Am I just distracting them? It's just a thing that you need to think about. I don't really have any tools or guidance there, just to keep this in the back of your mind more than anything. Because remember, again, that language models are sequence predictors. Okay, sequence in, sequence out. Okay, feed in long sequence. Okay, that's what it's responding to versus that one. Sequence in, sequence out.
Okay. It's not just a long sequence, also emotional.
There's more
framing.
Yeah. So there's more. Yeah, exactly. There's more context. There's more manipulations, right? There's more. There's more bits and bobs that could affect the decision making, right?
Yeah, that's also very interesting. We can start understanding context better. We could, for example, look at the last 20 or 30 field experiments done in the top 5 journals, and then actually replicate it, see whether we get the same results, and then play with their wordings.
Yeah.
And then see when do you destroy, for example, when do you destroy social norms, when, you know, so you can do a lot of contextual variation and see and explore the stability of the results by adjustments.
You make the manipulations more or less dramatic, right? Like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah. So I might, you know, if they're playing into moral suasion, or what, I can't never say that word. If you're trying to, you know, if they're trying to play at that, okay, and they're using this very subtle thing, what if I scale it up? What if I bring in a different but related aspect of that moral sort of suasion that they're trying to push? But it is interesting to go, you know, you might have traditionally with the experiments and things like that, we're trying to like abstract things away, make it very simple, and you know, the mechanisms are very, very clear and precise. Okay, but yeah, let's do that. Let's have a look at that, and then let's fill in the gaps again. So, and then go back out. So there are, yes, absolutely. Now, complexity, just when we're talking about complexity, you know, this is a really nice graph. It's just more for you guys to think about, like, the different things that I could be bringing into my stories in terms of context, the complexity of context here. And context in this graph here, or this image, is a very complex sort of multiplex, right? You got that sort of physical layer, the human layer, the economic layer, the political layer. There's multiple interacting elements. They're all touching and interacting with each other, and there's this lovely big complexity of behaviour in this sort of multi-layer network. Just a cool picture, and go read the paper as well. It's really, really good paper. Now, again, so we remember we had those economic games from before, okay? We went through the real cut and dry version of them. We're doing like, you know, trust game, return this, given that player A give us this much. Okay, now let's add context in. And that's kind of relating to Benno's comment here. So the first go that we did with these economic games, we tried to make them very abstract, okay? We cut out all the context and the details. We want to be very clear and precise with our mechanisms. Now, this time we're going to say, no, let's take that original game and let's add context in, okay? Now here, you know, the first one, it's exactly the same up until that last sentence of the question, okay? So everything is exactly the same. We're looking up at trust B, low context. Player A has transferred you less than 30 units to you. It's been tripled. You now have that doesn't make sense. You have 90 units. You need to make some sort of choice. Okay, in the first one, that was it. But in this one, we've added some context and saying, hey, player A has a mild physical disability. Okay, it's adding in context to the decision making. Okay, before it was abstract. We don't know who player A and player B was. Okay, let's see if disability matters and how I treat someone with a disability, knowing that I know that, right? Okay, enter the exact value. Everything's the same again, except it's that little tiny little change, okay, in the context, the framing, or the prompts that you're feeding in, okay? So that's that idea of, you know, going from the abstract experiments, which is the typical approach with human research, right? get rid of the context and make it very abstract and neat and nice and stylized, versus the, let's add it back in and start to explore the context of economic decision making in these games, right? And it's very easy in that sense as well. As you can see, literally add one sentence and you've got a different, you're asking and answering a slightly different question as well, which is cool. Now, you can think about, again, really research question, question ID and answer instruction. Again, get as crazy and wacky as you want. And I started to get real wacky towards the end here. We're getting into like network analysis, okay? Like my research question, okay? Remember, we start off with Ben telling us, what is your question? What's your hypothesis? Okay, so what's my question here? It's how do communication patterns within group influence decision making? Okay, probably a pretty poorly worded question by Ben's standards, but that's okay. Now I'm going to use some social network analysis for observing interactions in decision-making tasks. Cool. My question is describe the communication flow during this group decision task, blah, 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 blah. Okay, answer instruction, record all your verbal, non-verbal, noting the initiator and the receiver of the communication and the content type. Okay, so a lot of words there, but basically now the thing that spits out here is going to be like line by line, communicator and receiver, agent 1, agent 2, and what they said. Okay, like multiple dot points of that. I need to do a bit of data extraction or sort of like cleaning on the other side. I might need to use some regex expressions or whatever to pull out those line by line. Okay, but I'm getting like a nice, beautiful sort of behavioral log from this interaction, and then I can recast that into a network, right? Because I've got start and receive or directed graph, right, in that sense. So you can think about not just, while yes, there's a little bit more cleaning to go here, you can then feed the simulation outputs into a different set of analysis, like the network analysis, right? So don't just think about what making it as simple as possible, or the yes nos. Yes, in some circumstances I want a yes no. Okay, is this thing here or not? Yes, no. Okay, yes, but maybe sometimes it's okay to let it the answer be a little bit more sort of open-ended, I guess, in that sense. If I get some more extra value out of it, like a network graph here, which is really cool.
I mean, the justification possibility offers us to go way beyond Kahneman was doing the framing one. And I was thinking, for example, if we start testing contextual elements much more interesting way, and what you can think about it, I don't know whether you guys know this famous playwright, German man Bertolt Brecht. Have you heard about him?
Yeah, Bertolt Brecht, yeah.
Bertolt Brecht. So he refers to this kind of distance effect. So when do you get the audience to start distancing yourself emotionally from the characters, so that you are able to somehow have this kind of intellectual empathy, almost like a mediator when you solve conflicts? And when you get even too far away, you become a psychopath. But you can play around between closeness, attachment emotionally, then intellectual empathy, that you try to understand the situation, try to be a good mediator, like a good, think about diplomatic service. And when do you become almost like a psychopath, not caring about? But you can start playing around with the context information and see when do you reach this distance. That better practice into the behaviours effect, he calls it, which is really interesting.
As in to talk about alignment to and from different
it's a new
profiles.
Way of
like
framing, much better, in a much more interesting way. Because
it's a different way to look at alignment as well. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it is alignment. Yeah,
it could be alignment, yeah, in a sense, but it's a new dimension. Like Kahneman was saying, framing, yes or no. Where you frame that this is what you expect to do. The frame, but I think that's a continuous.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Well, in the end, you frame because when you communicate, you frame. What I'm talking about is distance, yeah. Okay. But it's Bertolt Brecht's, it's distance. You generate distance to the audience, and therefore you distance yourself as a viewer from the actors, and then you generate this kind of, he calls it intellectual empathy. But you can, I think there's a balance, that you can also go too far away, and then you become more like a psychopath. I couldn't care less if that person dies. So there's this kind of playing around with it. And this is extremely important for conflict resolution and other aspects in life in general.
Okay.
And we can be much more precise
Yeah.
than kind of much more interesting.
Yeah. It sounds
than David.
Sounds really, and you know, I'm guessing that there's, if anyone's sort of looking at it into like the stuff around well, I mean, like I don't know, for just to make a link back to Sohail, because his confirmation is today, an awesome job.
So proud of you.
Yeah, like the shitstorm, right? And like, okay, so someone's going through a shitstorm, and my ability to put myself in their shoes or to pile on. Okay, so like this, talking about this distance,
That's
or
alignment,
like, so it's really interesting. I haven't read the book. Really interesting.
By the way, we have already mentioned the word 19 times. We are allowed to say 20.
Oh, okay. Yes, according to Steve, we're not. So is he online or?
Easiest way to increase the usage of the word is to ban it. What you're talking about is using the machine for behavioural therapy.
Yes. Afterwards, afterwards you
what a
use
clinical psychologist
afterwards
does, right? They tweak at the margins of social distance and affiliation to try and move people forward, right?
Without shocking them into
Without
turning
turning
away.
psychopaths.
You need them to have their own observability on their life without getting too close and caught up there. Very interesting.
Do you think we can do that?
It's
Do you think we can do that?
No, it's very interesting. Like, and
I
you know,
send the link to Werner Brecht's idea.
yeah, no, that's cool. Just to get a bit more intuitive. Cool.
Because this, do you really think we can use this tool for this? Because you're starting to get the area of consciousness.
Yes.
And this is really.
Where do people go to pour out their thoughts? Where do people go? Where have they traditionally gone to go into some, deep Reddit forum or what, or go onto the web, and then so I
dial 119 and get your own, clinical psychologist to help you out.
Well, like it's more that the stuff it's had a very raw, unedited version or account of interactions on the web and the information and knowledge on the web. Okay, so some people go to the web to pour out their feelings, and there's all these self-help forums and all that sort of stuff where we talk about our problems and we talk about how to overcome them together, or so all of that's captured, all these little sort of ideas.
I think what you're asking is can you, with an as-if method, which we do in the end, this is an as-if statistical method, to simulate emotions as if they would have emotions, or as if they would behave like humans.
Yeah.
So where is the boundary between a statistical approach and a more structural way that Minsky suggests to achieve consciousness? But here's a more kind of theory of the mind approach, which you can easily extend on that, make it a little less statistical, more structural.
I think this means I can set up a mini me and test me before I do a real me.
Yes, correct.
One day.
You can clone yourself a little bit.
Yeah, one day.
You can
We'll
clone
get
yourself
there.
a little bit.
We will get there.
At least in the virtual world, you can die a couple of times in the virtual world.
But the stuff that we're talking about here, and you would have noticed over the last 5 sessions, the shit we're talking about here is not they're not small problems in science. They're big research areas. Hint that it means you might be able to use this, or the language models, whether or not it's SurveyLM or hint, you might be able to use these to tackle a wide range of problems. That's basically what we're saying here. Or the underlying story, right? So yes, think about these different ways of answering the questions to get different sort of data logs that you want. Maybe it's eye tracking. Eventually when we're adding in visual sort of inputs rather than, question answer. Okay, right now, SurveyLM doesn't have it, but, that's the next step in terms of the progression plan or the pipeline of features, right? Then you can ask about visual processing, okay, and things like that. So really go to look at empirical methods from across the sciences and see how you can adapt these in creative ways to question and answer instruction. And the stuff that you guys will come up is probably really, a lot more creative than what, I'll get in this, sort of half hour sort of thing or next couple hours. So play around with it. And the really important thing is that each and every one of you have your own sort of your niche and your specialization and your lived sort of experience context about you. That means that you guys will be able to spin this thing into a direction that's uniquely creative, and someone else might not have been able to get there, right? So everyone has their own little specializations, and sort of like when you team up with the interaction with the AI, then you got your own little niche there. So don't be worried in that sense. Everyone will carve out their own niche when they interact with it. Memory.
I mean, I worry about ethics in that case. Once you can calibrate very precisely, which fix about what you're trying to do, then ethics will put sooner or later red flag on saying that we're now calibrating close to humans.
Yes.
So it's hard enough having to work out whether a scale now is acceptable, let alone a scale within a computer with an API they don't understand.
It becomes
really
it becomes tricky. It shouldn't be a problem for next couple of years, but once they figure out that, okay, if you calibrate and you start intrinsically internalize this kind of persona, persona.
You're talking about minorities?
Or no, or like you little yourself, and then you see what happens to your little yourself if you start pushing your little yourself into critical environments. That can lead to potential psychological harm. That you actually, for example, you create yourself, and you put yourself into a medical experiment.
It's about that. It's like
and then you see that actually you would actually kill that person with electroshocks.
The first thing I would do when running a well-being one was kill grandma. I've always wanted to kill grandma and see what happens.
Very interesting TV
But this is emerging on. Do object agents have rights? Can you cause them harm? Right?
They're the same ideas.
This is way outside their area.
They're big
But that's
questions.
still okay, because I mean,
And
there are
it's gonna go that way.
simulations like, for example,
I guess
you know,
go look at the deep
the
fake
SIR
picture,
model,
and,
epidemics,
Yeah.
there's still agent-based simulation.
I don't know how many people actually ask them how
You
they
can
feel.
create
like
your own
surveys.
stuff. You
No,
can create your own
exactly.
style. Instead of
Well,
example
like,
doing your
I was
personality
just
test,
talking about yesterday randomly.
you create your profile, and you calibrate your profile, and then afterwards you put them into milligrams, Stanford test, and other ones, and
Like
see
we
how you
think
perform.
money and you're happy with it, happens to it. So what is it?
Yeah.
What is going
They
on?
did that
Yeah.
already.
The Milgram one's been done, hasn't it?
LLM.
No, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
It should be one thing on the life, but
I'm saying I'm going to
deep fake is like, that would be a massive hit to Scarlet.
They probably
Yeah,
killed
and
someone.
It's just a mystery.
I like
It's taking me and my
Like
voice
taking my
sounds like,
characteristics.
it's not me. But it, and it's saying things that
characteristics.
sound like me, but it's not.
Putting the characteristics like
Everything
age.
I know of you, everything I know of you, I put it
Can I ask
all
you
the
a question?
information.
Because I'm not close to
Is this ethical?
what's going on in this university, but these discussions they're having on AI, are they discussing any of this stuff?
Nope.
Just
No.
teaching.
No.
Because the stuff that's happening
No,
at
luckily
the universities I'm aware of, they're worried about getting replaced, they're losing
Yeah.
their jobs,
Tony, don't tell
or
them.
whether or not you can let a student
They have
use
to practice.
ChatGPT when they write
Yeah.
the assignment.
I think you
It's
get
pretty
triple.
silly.
You get triple the ethics people if you want to go that direction.
You know, it's not,
Try to answer all those questions.
But we're not-
documentation and explanation.
Luckily, we're not there yet. So please get in your research projects now. Get them in now. Get it done quickly, okay?
Like 3 years.
And again, there, there's different. The key part, is sort of like, okay, in this next slide up here, for example, right? recalling the items that were presented. How many things can you remember? Describe. That's this. Telling me, okay, that's the salience or factors. Okay, so when you ask a question here, how many things do you remember? Describe any factors. Okay, it's a nice worded question. You can actually get quite a few bits of information out of that. Okay, what sort of things are they talking about in the scene that they remember? What was the first thing that was remembered, and so like talking about, I guess in that sense, another way to sort of chip away at what did you actually recognize in this scenario as to help you have a bit of peace of mind that the thing that you put into the system was picked up, perceived, responded to. So that little prompt there could also be used to help you sort of validate, I guess, in that sense. Lots of different ways to prompt and play around. This one's starting to get a bit wacky with the logical deductions and basically getting to a bit of event calculus, which is something from my thesis, which I haven't come back to yet. So anyway, again, uploading. So yes, upload. We've been through this a couple of times. Let's just get to it. Now, oh, right. Okay. At the end, I started to talk about all of these, the description of these different variables or parameters or whatever you want to call them, little levers that you can play around with SurveyLM. So again, question, answer instruction. What is it? Types of questions. Yes. How to actually respond to it. Give you some example use cases. Cool. Have a look through these if you want to. It gives you more context around what batch mode is, for example, or what temperature is, and some different ways you could use it in your research. So these slides sort of towards the end, have a look at it. We've already talked about a bit about this batch mode operation. So again, just reach out if you have any questions about it. Now the actual outputs, I suppose we've talked a little bit about, but again, just think about this sort of answer instruction, right? So you got some simulation ID for whatever simulation it was. You got the agent ID for the specific calibration or specification of that agent. Okay, so you know who's answering it. Okay, what question are they answering? That's your question ID. So what simulation, yes, or rounded simulations, what agent and who answered what, that's basically what we're saying there. What model did you use for that specific agent? What role were they playing? All that sort of stuff. And then finally, the key thing that you're actually probably interested in is the answer column. Depending on how you ask the question and the answer instruction that you had, that affects what goes in the answer, obviously. Okay, so a number from 1 to 7. Okay, it's going to give you a number from 1 to 7. Tell me from very poor to excellent. It'll give you somewhere along that sort of like it. So very obvious to state that.
I have a question.
Yes.
For me, it was difficult, and maybe also when we do the synthetic agents, we can tell them what they already are, right? Or like we can either simulate them, or we can use existing data, or we.
Oh yeah, imagine you are this, or,
yeah.
or answer this question with the profile of someone. Yeah.
Yes. So the question is, you can tell them already that, for example, they are satisfied or not satisfied. Or you can also ask them, you can just put the age and the or like in my case, the organization, ask them if they are satisfied. But what I'm asking is that you can, the point is that when you create the agents, you kind of like manipulate them.
Yes.
And if you ask to a real person, you ask them in a question mode where they are. So what's like, if I say, for example, I have a satisfied employee and I ask him, would you quit or not?
Yes.
The current research also ask them if they are satisfied. They don't tell you already they are satisfied. So we kind of skip one question step.
Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's up to you if you want to input. So yeah, the very very valid question. The like for example, sometimes you might. Okay, if I want to completely replicate or sort of like do this one-to-one mapping, okay, this is the real-world study I ran, okay, and I went through in this order. I asked some first questions to get context. I asked, is I presented you a scenario with a suite of questions relating to the scenario, then I asked some demographic questions. Okay, so I've, thinking about me going through this in the survey in the real world, or like going into Qualtrics and I'm stepping through the pages and the question blocks. Okay, if you want to do a full replication like one-to-one, like feed in the question and ask them still, are you satisfied or not? Okay, you would assume if you told them that they're satisfied, that they should answer yes. If they don't, then something's up. Okay, so sometimes it is useful to do that if you want to do that full approach. Your one here, you're not really comparing to a real world study in the first place, so
That's what I mean.
kind of don't need to, but it's up to you. If you want to fact check, okay, I told you that you're satisfied. Tell me if you are. Okay, if you want to fact check it or validate, you can ask the question. It's probably more so if you're trying to do this one-to-one mapping and you're sort of like, okay, I've told you your XYZ years, gender, whatever. Okay, and then just like in the real world, I asked the people these demographic questions. Okay, so I still ask the agent as well, just to keep things comparable. And they generally will be, just filling in the context that they've been given, right? So
Okay.
Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, and that's saying you can ask them this, but you cannot start a simulation without having the agent. And when you ask a survey, you start with a person, so you don't need to tell them you are a person. You don't need to tell them you are 25.
Yeah.
You don't need to tell them. Whereas in the agent, you have to tell them that you already have this characteristic.
Yeah.
So it can be tricky when you choose the characteristics.
In a sense, yeah.
If that's a question or already you made them, you are God, you made them.
Yeah.
It's also like, if in a real survey, those demographic questions can almost be like framing questions anyway. Like, if you do different demographic questions, maybe they might answer the question differently. Like, if you ask, what's your education level or something like that, or like, are you satisfied? That might like anchor them to that, or like frame that. And so they'll answer with that subconsciously in their mind. And it's the same thing, like, it's basically framing the question, saying you are like this person with these. It's the same as like in a normal survey. I don't know, that's how I interpret it.
But like you on survey, coming into SurveyLM, you don't need to say pretend you're a person. Kate already knows that if you have agent context and it's role playing as a person, it knows what to do. You don't need to tell it again, play a person, because it's already going to do it. And that's part of the offering that we do with SurveyLM, is to wrap up all this sort of stuff and to have it in an intelligent way, so we don't have to say, imagine you are. It takes it on, it embodies it, it calibrates it as part of our request handling process.
That goes into discussion about what's structure, what's representation. I think it's not clear sometimes what's better. Like, okay, humans, yes, they're already humans, but you don't know their values at all. You cannot just say that you're now a left wing person, totally to the left. While you could have this survey, you could do that.
That's what I mean.
So they can
You can like manipulate.
Internalize. So you get a little more controllability too, compared to humans. The question is again how much information you feed into the large language model.
Context of data.
That's the you're referring to. How much structural representation do I need?
Yeah.
Yes. How many variables?
So that's the context of detail.
How much context?
It's always going to be, and I guess it's like if you want to go to the human analog. Okay, we're doing some human-based research with human participants. Okay, like I've only got their attention for 10-15 minutes maximum, or maybe 30 minutes if they're scientists. Okay, and they actually care about the question, right?
Yeah.
So I've got 10-15 minutes. I want to ask all these questions because everything matters. Everything is connected to everything. Okay, I want to ask all these things. I'd love to, but I only got 10 minutes, so I have to choose the most precise things. The key things that I think are going to make the biggest difference, or connecting back to what is your question, hypothesis you're testing. Okay, what are the things I'm actually looking at? The key parts of the relationship that I'm testing. Okay, go back to your question with Ben, and in that sense, it's a Ben thing, and then build up. Okay, what are the things I got to include from there? Okay.
Yeah, not only as well, because it can do so much, it can be tricky if
It's
you
hard.
don't really tell them
Yeah.
literally what you want. They can say you anything, or like as it happened with us that we asked.
But it's
Sequence
in, sequence out. We just imagine anything that we feed it. Okay, we treat it as that's what we feed it, and it responds to the sequence. Yeah.
What's wondering would be interesting, for example, to look at an environment where you have a lot of information. A lot of information you have with politicians.
Yeah.
So you feed any information that you have in the internet of, let's say, Clinton, before he became president. So you feed everything in there.
Yep.
And afterwards, you confront Clinton with all the important decision-making processes throughout his presidency.
Yeah.
For example, how would you structure the cabinet?
Yeah.
What would you do in that sense?
Yep.
Different kind of decision-making.
Yep.
That's when you look at close, you're getting to what he has actually.
Yep.
Doing. That could be very interesting from a.
Can I ask you
Yes, so we are doing a grant at the moment.
And you don't just have 1,000
yeah.
Clinton, one Clinton. You just run 1,000 Clintons.
Yeah.
Like parallel universe.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
You can play around with it a little bit. What if the Congress would have rejected this and this? So you do multiverse.
If I can ask a more simplistic question, one of the issues that rises initially when you start developing manual questionnaires is word choice, and this gets you into the world of communication.
Yeah.
Now, we know that the average Australian has a working vocabulary of about 900 words, right?
Yep.
Versus a typical PhD, which has a working vocabulary somewhere between 6,000 and 15,000.
Yeah. My God.
So,
Jesus.
what happens if I'm writing a vignette or a question and I say something like, I think that there are underlying factors in this thing I'm looking at which are endogenous to the outcome that I'm interested in, right? Now that's the way that you and I would write it in an academic paper. If you said that to the average person who lives in the the average person is in that large language model, right? We don't know, right? So my question is, at what point, at what level do we choose particular levels of words, right?
Yeah, it's again the rule of thumb from like or some rules of thumb that I would go back to there would be from like document engineering field, and they call it as like just a rough rule of thumb, grade 8 reading level of 8 or 8 to 10 or something.
Like Courier Mail, right?
Just
a 10-year-old.
So basically again keep things as simple as you need them to be without being overly simplistic and overly abstract, right? And that idea of so I fall back to those sort of the document engineering rules of thumb. It's just me personally. But
don't use words in 3 syllables.
Just like keep it grade 10, 8, 10 if you want to represent those people. Okay, if you've got some people that are PhDs in your data set that you want to represent, you can ask them the harder questions or use the big words, right? Fit it to your, like anything with marketing or with this market research, right? Like we always got to fit it to our audience, and the questions we're asking fit it to your audience. Okay, know who you are asking the questions or trying to probe in the first place. What grade do they read at? What sort of knowledge might they have? What sort of words would they use or different in different contexts? And it speaks to this whole thing about validation as well. Yes.
I think we were talking about virtual history. What if something didn't happen?
Yeah.
I think that could be even more beautiful than trying to replicate the knowledge space how things was, because you could say, look, get rid of all your knowledge around World War II.
Yeah, or like, what if JFK didn't get shot?
Just disregard any knowledge around World War II. That's it, more or less, and then it's hard. And then see how people, respond. This what if this counterfactual is called virtual history. Maybe interesting from a SurveyLM perspective or large language model that erasing, what I'm saying is sometimes erasing information is easier than creating calibration. That's all.
Yeah. And it's sort of like a roughly, we talked, I think last week we talked about this idea of like, you know, if you're thinking about, you know, the language model thinks in embeddings, okay, and we reproject that to some 3D, you know, embedding space, okay, if I take this node out here, what is the implication on the rest of the network? Okay, so I take out this key link between World War II and the rest of, I take out this node or set of nodes, World War II, okay, shit, what happens then? How does the graph reorganize itself? Okay, I don't know. And it talks to that idea, you know, do we leave out the left and the right? Okay, do I leave out the polarizing views? Or, you know, in a debating sort of context, you know, should we be cancelling the most right and the most left? I don't know. But it talks, you know, you need to understand that, you know, you get rid of love, you get rid of hate, right? You just dumb analogy there, right? But they're so close together, you get rid of one, you get rid of the other, right? In some sense, there's no relative comparison anymore. If I don't have a bad day, I don't know what a good day is.
Rewrite the Bible without help.
Yeah. Whoa.
More practical.
How does that look like?
Picking up on what you said before, we could do this with the Hilda. We could do this with the Hilda. More practically, I just picked up, because I read them before, if you create agents with types and then run SurveyLM, and then you inform those agents about everything in the Hilda, about the individual.
Yeah, exactly.
Then what you can do is predict the gaps, but you can also look backwards.
That's what I'm saying.
Yep.
Because we have household identification, we know the network within the household.
Yep.
So then by manipulating the agent, grandma didn't die,
Yep.
what would it predict then, right? So we can actually...
What if grandma didn't die?
Correct. Correct. Or what if John F. Kennedy didn't get killed?
Yeah,
Would you have got divorced?
Mm.
Right? So we could start looking at... So we could use the real world collected data in the socioeconomic surveys, where we know an outcome, and then we could change the type and then see if the outcome changed through prediction.
Yes.
Using network analysis.
Now, if you want to get real big, this is just going real abstract with this, but like that's a benchmarking, right? It's just we're getting creative with how we benchmark.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right? And the AI field, benchmarking is yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. Did it get it right? Or like, you know, score from 1 to 10 based on some human inputs. Maybe it's A/B testing we're doing with the, which one do you like? You know, response A, response B. Okay, it's all the same. It's a very basic form of benchmarking, but where we're moving into when we're talking here is about getting into these complex benchmarking. You know, these complex forms of benchmarking.
Because the change in the agent is effectively a field experiment. Right?
It's in the end
a field experiment. So with respect to say something which is quite topical at the moment, which is the non-achievement of Indigenous Australians with respect to the 20 outcomes that we want, right? What would happen if we changed school attendance rate in this model of
to behaviours?
Or, you know, we've already got preliminary regression analysis to show that if we gave each family $20,000 a year, that a lot of these problems would go away. We think, but we can test this in a field experiment using this model by just tweaking the income of families.
Yep.
Very simple, and see if we got a change in attendance rate.
Yep.
We know we will, we think, right? But at the moment, what we do is we implement a $100 million program in Northern Territory, which has had absolutely no bloody outcome whatsoever, because they spent the money in the wrong place.
You can launch now a discussion around basic income.
Yep. So yeah, get wacky with it, right? Get real wacky with it, and get into them soon, because there's, like we're saying, ethics is coming. Right, so get into it now. Now we've finally got there after 5 weeks. Well, this is the 5th week, but we're the group activity. Okay, so I put out like a form a while back but I haven't actually checked it. So the responses, so it kind of defeats the purpose. But let's work together, basically. I don't know if we want to just do one together in the group all together for the first one, maybe. I don't know if we want to crowdfund, or I've got some data from that we could look at with Tony or something like that. Yeah. Okay, so I don't know if we want to just get a very, very, very high overview from you, Tony, about how you what were you looking into. So let's start with your then question. What was your research question and hypothesis?
I gotta stop this thing. I gotta stop that.
I gotta stop it.
No, it will stay for the next couple of years.
Oh, what's wrong? I'm sorry, you're getting embarrassed.
That's what you hope as a researcher, that
You're known for something.
like
Oh, sorry. I
Like
didn't know.
some sort of domain,
Sorry. I'll stop making fun of you. It was meant to be a compliment.
No, it's even more relevant than a citation, you know, like the,
Oh, wow. It was meant to be a compliment. But yeah,
Basics,
I
you know,
got
you know,
it.
you know,
Yeah. So just coming back to our question and your hypothesis, please. From Tony, can we get a very high level view on what we were trying to achieve? Okay, so we had a few questions. It was about trust, right? And it was about newly forming groups. Okay, so how do we increase trust in newly forming groups, or what are the mechanisms for trust formation in newly formed groups?
Yeah. So basically, what I did for my masters was look at a theory that says that certain factors determine your perception of certain traits of an individual, determine a decision to join a situation where there's risk involved, right? So in this case, it was the context was a student who had to join a group which was 40% of their assessment. They weren't in a group at the moment. They had to be within the next couple of days. We gave them a vignette of different abilities of groups and how nice they were to people, and whether they were truthful and had high levels of integrity. So it was a classic laboratory experiment in organizational psychology, using a 3x2 factorial design where people were given information about types, and then on the back end we validated the theory using structural equation modeling methods. The thinking here is that we grab all the types for the students, so all of the identifying age, gender, and all the other stuff. We create agents within SurveyLM, and then we replicate the experiment. We collect the data again, and then we run the same analysis on the back end, and then we compare the outcome of the manual versus the SurveyLM model. Right? The expectation being that the SurveyLM model is as good as, if not better than, the manual method. Right? The reason we're doing that is to provide confidence that we can use SurveyLM to replicate this across a whole bunch of other areas by both replicating existing papers but perhaps doing new ones. Right? Because one of the issues that you get into, not so much with economists, because they usually don't know anything about it anyway, but particularly with people in psychology and organizational psychology management, is their paranoia about the selection of instruments and data collection methods and all of these things. But SurveyLM appears to have, given the consistency of its behaviour on the back end, if it does behave like a human, then we really can automate data collection, which is about 80% of the cost and effort of most studies. So we could literally, theoretically replicate all of the papers in the Academy of Management Review or the Journal of Management or social indicators research overnight if we do automate this. Which means that in the future, we don't need to use human subjects, which gets rid of the ethics problem. So we can kill grandma in my wellbeing studies. Or in the case of Benno talking before, we can understand how people anticipate that, which is a big issue, particularly in economics. Where do you apply resources, how much and when? So yes, that's important. So that was my thinking. So this today I can
Awesome.
see the possibility of actually running a field experiment, not a laboratory experiment, but a field experiment. Because the issue with laboratory experiments is they lack external, they lack the context of reality. And we all worry about even trust gains in the lab and learning effects. But these might get over this perhaps.
You can run field experiments, but you can even do more. You can actually run natural experiments.
Well, that's it. That if we can inject shocks that weren't there before, like keeping John F. Kennedy alive.
Correct. Which you can do.
Well, this is perfect for economic policy. Right? What happens if we drop the rate on the risk-free rate next month instead of 6 months' time? What do you think is going to happen to prices and demand?
Alrighty.
This is a really useful tool if it behaves like you give them on the back.
Now that was a very good summary, Tony, and I really appreciate you giving me a bit of time here. Are you still going? Sorry. Oh, you are? You are? Okay. No, it's okay. No, sorry. I was saying genuinely that was and it was really good to give me a bit of time. Okay, because what I've just done here, and I'm happy I can share this prompt with you, right, like a little bit later. But essentially what we were doing, we're going from this messy document, okay, this one over here, which is the exact study that Tony ran. Okay, so we started off here, we had some consent. Yep, blah, 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 blah. Yep, do we accept? Cool. Now we proceed. Okay, the first block of questions where we're talking about these like 20 questions or something, or 18, okay? Yep, then we move down, we go to the next block, okay? What I'm trying to do is convert that into a format that SurveyLM likes. Now, I just did, again, I can share this prompt with you via Jen, maybe, when we send out for some feedback. Please give me some feedback. I'll send this out, but it starts to show you how you can pretty quickly build these, like the question ID, and the answer structure. Noting also that the language models are really good at doing this sort of shit, right? They're probably better at humans. If I go and hire an RA, and I ask them to do the same task, I'm actually not sure where it's going to go. This is a pretty good first pass for me, so I'm just let's just go with that. Because there's a lot of research coming out around, okay, AI agents are actually much better thematic coders than human RAs. Okay, so just keep that in the back of your mind. While I'm seeming to be very strict about these formats and things like that, it's actually quite easy to create them quickly. Now,
You've done the 2 minutes, which took me 2 months.
Yeah.
Well, you build the hard work into it. So.
Now, that being said, it's still, when I've copied it over, I don't fully love how it's given me this thing, okay? Because when I come in with SurveyLM, I need it to be one row, okay? So answer instruction, yes, there always needs to be one answer instruction to one question here. We've bunched them all together with the questions here, okay? So there's gonna be a little bit of cleaning. Let me just go back and let's ask the agent to clean it up, please. Hey, please try again. Please try again. I need you to make sure there is always one question and one answer instruction. When I...
In terms of SurveyLM as agents, we also are talking about humans, and we have social scientists, but I was wondering how easy it is to get, in general, biological entities, which should not have to be humans, can be other species. Yeah, or could be like, mutations of humans, or could be, I don't know,
Mars attacking.
Yeah. I mean, whether you can actually, for example, what you would do is you feed in the human, and then you assume, let's assume there is this kind of mutations.
Yeah.
And try to simulate Darwinian evolution process, and based on these physical conditions of the Earth,
and then you start changing some parameters, physical parameters, how life could be in a different planet, and then create a new intelligence. Is that, do you think this is doable in this kind of survey, LM or ancient print? I mean like of space now, but I'm just wondering, we always talk about agents as humans, but how far can we push it through simulating biology and physics into those systems?
I don't know. We've got to do it through, from a scientific perspective, we've got to reverse engineer from manual back into automated.
That's validation.
Using accepted internal and external validity.
I think
and placebo methods, right? Otherwise, the people won't believe this is the agent behaves off the human. That's the underlying issue, right? Now, once we prove to the best of our extent that machine traits equal human traits and machine behavior equals human behavior, we can do any damn thing we like, right?
No, I think we are on track with the human validation. I'm just wondering whether
we're going to scare the hell out of society.
It can come, not science fiction, but we can actually. Yeah, but it's knowledge space. It has any knowledge space.
But it's still based on information that humans have created. So still limited to
absolutely.
how, like we might have a perception of what we think.
That's my question. That's my, because it's not just, I think it's more than just. I think it's about humans discovered. What I'm saying is the human has discovered, for example, how is the mechanism of evolution. So that's knowledge base available, and you feed the entire evolution process, so how evolution works. You feed it the human information. You know, can you simulate the future us in terms of evolution? Can you play around with predictability? Or what's really important, there's this nice book, for example, says that we are humans based on those physical constraints, and physical constants define what you're able to do and what not. So it limits your possibility set in how you evolve as a species, any species.
I would think the biggest issue
you play around
is the one
with
that
those
the CEO of the AI lab has already been addressing, and that is that people won't allow certain IP in the language, which means when you send the agent after information, it won't be fully controlled. That's the biggest issue.
But would you do it one step at a time, like a iterative process? You know?
Yes, it would be an iterative process.
Jump.
No, you would do an iterative process because you say you simulate,
actually
simulate, you know, and count. It's like you run a simulation.
Random network analysis.
Yeah.
What is this or that?
No, but you say use the biological information you have in terms of again random mutation, selection. You know, explain, you know, based on the DNA and errors that are happening. Just internalize all the knowledge, biological knowledge that we have, and then assume we are at the stage of where we are as a human species.
I can't believe how fast you've done this.
Given certain level.
Not quite though.
But you have to have
learn how to do that.
Not not quite though. Like, so what I'm doing right now.
Because mine ChatGPT gets right after the questions. No, you cannot ask too much if you don't pay.
What are the costs on the back end?
Hold on.
Yeah, exactly.
And I assume the university aren't giving you any money to pay for these costs, right? So we need a funding source to ask questions.
It's look, it's like okay, so yeah, I mean, to just keep it online. No, it's not with the API cost, but then there's also the web hosting costs. Web hosting cost is the thing that keeps us from not being able to keep it online. The data cost is onto the people. Everyone, about 300 a month. That's on the cheapest instance, and it's on a CPU, and it's not using GPUs. It's just sitting there. Crazy. Yeah.
Steve and I just worked out over a coffee how we're going to get money.
Yeah.
We just worked out how we're going to get money.
There is. There is.
If we get
Yeah, but that's a lot.
all of the types in the Hilda as agents, that's 21,000.
Correct, yeah.
We rent them out at 50 cents a time to anybody who wants to do research. We just got all the money we need. We have so much cash.
No, I agree.
So you actually do it.
You do what
Just don't tell ethics.
you do what prolific and all the other.
Yes, what they're already doing.
50 cents a time. 50 cents an agent. You want 1,000 agents, cost you $500 for your data collection.
I agree.
It's not because you $5,000
Yeah.
for that
They will
data
go
collection.
after us.
Yes.
You know?
It's
The
why
Melbourne Institute gets $5 million a year from the federal
I'm
government.
glad you, and this is your frustration, and you can feel. I'm glad you can feel it. You can feel my internalized rage. So now look. Let's just coming back to this a bit. Like I just look. This is another lesson for you guys. Yes, okay. AI is a super awesome coder. Yeah, but they also suck. In terms of what I actually want. Now, maybe I just suck at prompting them. Maybe I, like the context that I provided, the examples I provided weren't clear enough. Okay, I had to go back and do a bit of more work and be a bit clearer about my examples. Okay, then it starts to spit it out in the format that I wanted. Now, what I was trying to do here is like, okay, sometimes I might be answering one question in one row. Okay, so like the consent one, do you consent or not? Cool, yep, great. Now, sometimes I ask blocks of questions, okay? Like if we go with the analog version, okay, the original copy, okay, we had 18 questions that they see before they proceed to the next page, okay? So 18, yep, we can do the same thing or bring it across into SurveyLM format with this,
That is a really important thing in developing questionnaires.
Yes, so do I want to split them across many rows or do I want to have them in one row? Okay, so one row. Okay, so be mindful. One row. If you want to get multiple in, this is one approach. Okay, usually you need to use those little BR. Okay, in XML brackets, break. Okay, line break. Sometimes you need to think in XML. That's a way to get our question blocks. Okay, versus just single questions. Just a little note for you. I'm just going to take these top two. No, let's go top. Fuck it. Why not? Let's do it all. Let's do it all. Why not? And see if it still doesn't want to copy across properly. So that's lovely. Let's do this. I'll just clean this one up manually. So even though I had these beautiful AI helpers, they still don't help me in bringing stuff across to the exact format that I want it, but that's okay. If I had more time, I would just keep iterating with them and try, and I can trial different things. Okay, so I'm just going to go with 2 questions for now because, yeah, I don't want to have to do it for everything.
This is no more than 8 lines per page.
But is survey, does the Hill allow us to do that? Because then we use their information for commercial.
We could do the Hilda for 1/5 price of Melbourne Institute.
No, but the Hilda,
$1.5 million a year instead of
the Hilda will not allow. Does the Hilda allow us?
Oh, God.
No. Theoretically, they can't stop us because we're not tweaking the units.
But you use then the outcome for.
At this point, we need Rex, the lawyer.
Now, I'm just going to take a massive shortcut, even though we're not allowed to take shortcuts in science. I'm going to take a massive shortcut and just copy 2 questions because I don't want to do this, sit here and do that, because there's better things we can learn with our time than watching me reformat things. So now I've got this little book here. So we've taken, Tony's these raw pages. I've started to convert them into this idea of Q1, Q3 here, right? So I've started to convert them into the format required. Again, if I had another half hour, we could probably finish this off, but let's not. So I've got it into this format. Remember, yeah, case sensitive. That's really annoying. Okay, question ID, okay. Usually when ChatGPT spits them out, they're capitals, so just keep that in mind. You might just get straight away an issue. So we've saved that. We've converted a tiny little bit of Tony's thing here, so that's cool. Now I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second while I use my password. Now Tony at the same time had given me some agent profiles, which I haven't cast back into their original codings yet, but I'll show you what I mean in a second. Ooh.
I had the same problem. I just looked at it. I think you just cancel the I key. No.
Oh, this is good. Oh, let's go with that one. Yes. Oh God, this is going to suck if oh, good. I was going to say that would suck if I can't even get into it. So yes, I've uploaded some data. Let's just wait for that one to load a while. Right. So again, we'll have our data sort of populate in here when it's coming through. It's deciding to be a little bit slow at the moment. So anyway, let's move on. That's yeah, I'll show you. The one that I transferred in there was this thing. Just 2 simple questions. I'll blow it up. Again, it's only a tiny little bit of that document. If I had more time, I could go through. On the agent side of things, okay, I'll blow this up as well. Now, let's get rid of that. Get rid of that. All right, so there's some codes here, right? Like 1, yeah, faculty 1, gender 1. Now I know just based on having seen the other document or the other side of the data is, oh, you guys can't even see this. Sorry. Even I know that you know from having seen the rest of the data that 1 is male, I think, and 0 is female. Okay, so I'm just going to put that there for now. Okay, ideally 0, thank you. 0 is female, okay. Now, in the ideal world, again, I wouldn't be so lazy and I would just replace each of those with their text values, okay. This will still work, but ideally you want to have all the text values because it helps the agent.
So you can just put the female and male instead of 1 and 2?
Yeah, that's what we would, yeah. If I had more time, I'd go through and I'd replace them, yeah.
This is significant because when we change
Very
it to a number, we reintroduce the C-logic effect at the margin of 1 and 2, right? And we remove the ordinal cardinal problem too.
But you need to put the number if you want to do the
Instead of 1 and 2, 0, 1. What do you mean?
Well, in that it doesn't matter, right? We could if we're looking at non-binary gender.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So in a non-binary gender situation, the problem I've got to do is am I 0, 1, and 2, or am I 0, 1/2, and 1, and all this? So turning them into numbers complicates further calculations and decisions, particularly whether you want to do mathematics. But the use of language doesn't.
Yeah. So now let's
because it's
pretend.
Now, if you say somebody is bi, then they're bi. That's it. You don't have to worry about the machine.
All right. Now, again, I'm going to be lazy. Don't do this.
Just Control H.
Yeah.
Highlight everything. Control H.
Okay, female, blah, 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 blah.
You copy the first 2 and then you drag it down, then it saves both ends.
I'm just going to be making up shit now. That's okay. Let's just go with 3 people because, again, I can't be bothered. We're going to throw over to you guys next and we can work together on this sort of stuff. Okay, let's just pull out. Let's go Australia. Let's go US, United States. Let's go with, I don't know, Italian. In Australia, no, let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of that. Oh, work experience? Nah, yes, they have had work experience. No, they haven't. Experience.
I can see the 21,000 people in the middle of government of this.
Okay, and last one, yes, they do. Okay, and then let's get rid of all this shit. Rightio. So I'm just being lazy again, and I've pulled it back. Okay, you've pretended that I've done a proper version of this, and I've converted all these back into their text values or their string values. Okay, because that's how language models like to see it. They work in language, not those conversions, right? And uploading agent data.
It's really the issue of absolute versus relative we can remove, so that we can interpret well-being of the Swiss exactly with the well-being of New Zealanders or something like that, which we can't do it.
Yeah, you can exactly, you can contextualize.
But also things just like price parity, like a universal PPP, but for human traits and behaviours.
So I like just a bit of pre-work. Okay, I've come up with these. I've got our questions and answer instructions in the format we need. We've got some agent data. Okay, and I've uploaded them both. Now we need to make some choices about the parameters of the simulation. Okay, so let's work through this together. This experiment we are running, batch mode, on and off. What do we reckon? On? Do we want to have them all seen at the same time? Yeah. So if we had this sort of the human agent. They saw it. They had memory of all the questions. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. They had memory.
Normally people would flick through this questionnaire before they answered the first question.
Sweet.
Yes.
So they had memory. They saw everything. That's
Yes.
the question. And they saw the first thing, and then they kept going through. Okay. Cool. That means batch mode is on. Okay, so we want to make sure that they see, yes, the first question, the second one, we want to see them all together, but we're going to proceed down in the linear sort of or logical format. Okay, but if we turn batch mode off, then we're seeing a consent question. Yep. Okay, and then I forget about it, and then the next one, answer this question, these 10 questions here. Okay, then I forget about it. Okay, there's no continuity. Okay, so in this particular situation, this context, this research question, where we're comparing to this real world study and trying to get as close as we can to it, batch mode's on in that sense. We don't need to bother with reset or parameters. That's only to do with these synthetic profile constructions that we create on this side of the this side over here. So I don't know if you guys really want me to get into this because it's a little bit complex, but if anyone wants to ask me about that reset all parameters option and what it could do, come ask the question. So in our context, no, we don't need to touch this because we're not dealing with any synthetic profile construction. Now, you can imagine the circumstance where, okay, here's my agent data that I had from the real world context. Okay, maybe I come along and I decide that I want to test maybe like personality or something like that. Okay, so I'm enriching my original data with something that I didn't actually collect in the first place. In that case, I could probably add it through here. Okay, so synthetic profile construction, personality, type A, type B, that sort of thing. Now I have to think about reset all parameters. Okay, if I add something in through this synthetic profile generation part, I then have to think about whether or not I need to consider resetting or not all parameters. If I click it on, I run one simulation, and I've randomized, for my existing set of agents. Okay, I randomize for each of these a personality, and I run a simulation. Okay, if I have reset all parameters on, the next time I run a simulation, it's going to re-randomize which personality it was. Okay. Now, if I wanted to go simulation 1, simulation 2, and I wanted the same agent, okay, if I re-randomize its personality, it's no longer the same agent. Okay, so that's all we're saying here. That's all that thing does.
This is interesting, because when I ran this study, I had to make a decision whether I was going to include locus of control or personality.
Yeah.
Because I was constrained by the number of
yeah.
Now we get at it now. We've got LOC data. but we don't have personality, right? And it was a major flaw in this.
You could have
Cheating, but
I'm going to show you guys my thing. Big no-no.
It's like a smarter way of
Naughty.
wrong word imputing, but it's imputing new variables.
Steve, do you have to align the question boxes, or does it not matter?
because when you impute, you imply which X's it determines the imputation method.
In this
the
sense.
imputation weights.
Do they need to
And
be
because we don't know
aligned
what those
with
weights
the
and,
format, or
and,
does it matter
and
if
covariates
it's
are,
aligned? Does it matter if it's like-
it's computing those.
Do you know what I mean?
Oh, like one
So we're
driver
gonna
is
have to
always
run some
to have,
validation
you know,
tests
like
to
the
see if
full
we turn
driver
out the
has
right
to fall.
types,
Yeah, I just
given
mean like
no
like
X's
yours
and no
because
weights.
it's
You
aligned
give
to
them
like
less
the
information
question
that you
or
have.
And it might still come up, given
multiple.
the
Does it have to be
outcomes,
aligned for a
behaviours
SurveyLM to
and
like
traits.
it?
Yeah, that's why I went from.
So you know,
Wait,
See what I
that's a
mean?
research
Oh.
question. Do known traits predict unknown
No, you like you can do
traits
this,
and
or you can.
behaviours?
Yeah, doesn't matter.
Nah.
Okay, cool.
Which is kind of what we
It
do
treats it all the
in
same.
most
Yeah.
experiments anyway, right? We collect what we can so that we can find out the missing trait or behaviour.
Yeah, there's a lot of methods taken.
This is pure method. It's my favourite playground.
So now we're sort of working through. We talked about this reset all parameters, test run. Yeah, like if you have a lot of questions and maybe you're doing like a, you know, the whole world value survey, for example, there's like 200 questions. I just want to check if my agent sort of parameters are set up in the way that I want, or that the data is going to come back in a format I want. Okay, yeah, turn test run on. It's usually a good idea just when you're doing a first sort of simulation, just turn that on. I turned it off for now. Different models, yes, different capabilities. Look into what they are to determine which one you want to use. Temperature, yes, we've talked about that in the past. Okay, so if I have temperature 0, 0, it's like choose the most likely token or predict, you know, the most likely sort of sequence prediction, I guess. I can play around with this value and increase it. Okay, if I'm getting up towards this sort of edge, sort of 1.5 temperature, things get really sort of wacky and they start to lose a bit of coherence. It's about like creativity or sort of like the option set, I suppose, that you can pull from. Given that AI has a very wide option set, okay, if I start opening it up too wide, the filter, okay, you think about like an RF filter or something like a radio sort of filter or something like that. If I increase the bandwidth, I'm letting through too much. The noise becomes overwhelming. Okay, so when I start to move this up, temperature up towards 1.5, I probably need to start tapping into these retries. Okay, so I'll try answer the question. I'll give you gibberish back. Okay, I'll try again. I take too long to think. I get caught in the think to react loop. Okay, and I might, and that's particularly when you're getting up at those nasty sort of levels.
How does that interact?
One is about a cutoff.
How does that interact with a typical instruction that you give in a survey, where you say, you know, you inform the subject, I'm about to ask you questions about trust, right? In whatever, right? I would like you to answer, answer wonderful for each question.
Yeah.
But I would like you to mark the number that first comes to mind, right? The last thing you want is people thinking about a lot of some of this stuff, right? Particularly on fundamental traits. Right? You don't want them to overthink it.
I think
will this change temperature? The overthinking?
I think temperature is like a if you go to just trial it out, go to 1.5 temperature and ask it something, a standard question, and you'll start to see the delusional sort of unset. Okay, it's a creativity measure, or it's a metric. You know, it's a lever for creativity. They call this a proxy for, well, lever for creativity in language models. Okay, what do we know about humans? If we turn up creativity too high, things get pretty wacky, right? So, like you can think about like disordered thinking and things like that, like you know, in that sort of lose grip of reality.
Normal for sociopath.
This temperature is really, at the moment they're just trying to control temperature, but then you think about more
can we do some work in the area of creativity and
Use it.
use it, extract it, use it, etc.
Yeah.
Because that goes too close to Feinstein's work.
But it'll be
How
interesting.
do you work with the possibility set? Guiding principles helps you, but you can play around with it a little bit.
Mm.
Well, you're bringing things in and out of possibility, the possibility set at that time. That's what overthinking does, is it changes that.
Yeah, exactly.
Changes it. Sometimes for the good, sometimes for the bad.
But yeah, I guess like the way I think of temperature in this, yeah, it gives you variance. Okay, so like if you need variance in your data, you only have very basic sort of descriptions. Maybe you only got 5 characteristics or demographic characteristics of your agents, the basic set. The age, gender, education, okay, very broad sort of descriptors about the person. In that context, temperature might be able to give you the variance that you need to, at the population level, the macro level, you get the variance you want, right?
So we could use that. We could use the existing data to validate through variance the temperature level.
Yeah.
Set it at 1, rather than the variance when I asked those questions in a manual environment was 23, right? And we could adjust temperature to reverse engineer it back.
Yeah.
Can we
using the statistics.
Define the temperature of the person.
Oh no, for the temperature for that part of society to be tested, right?
Or can you,
if you wish, the extent to which they thought about the questions, right?
An interesting thing would be, that goes with age-based modeling, but it would be interesting to have society with different groups in terms of the temperature. So that you have a group of crazy guys all over the place, and then you have a group that looks at the craziness and said, "Oh, this is really cool. Let's take this and this." And then actually explore how.
There'll be a recording in that.
Explore how this discovery process evolves. So you have these different societies with different level of temperature groups.
Yeah. So
you track about, and you decide what do you take out of those different ideas, and then you start looking at how these different societies evolve.
Yeah, because each line.
In a sense, how many wacky people do you need?
Yeah,
to keep to keep innovating, because many of those. I mean, there are good examples of artists, scientists, who are just crazy guys, but they're responsible for innovation in that sense.
Yeah,
in business work teams, you will often bring in somebody who's completely outside of the area.
Yeah.
Sometimes they do bring in artists or musicians, right? Because these people think differently, and they
just have 1 or 2 different ratios.
Different ratios, because you need sometimes. I mean, I don't know. Can you somehow? The very crazy ones, they don't know what to take out of this kind of craziness. So you need another group of people say, hey, okay, this makes sense. Let's take this. I wasn't able to get to that idea, but I see the value of it. So it's like warm and cold.
Yeah.
So you have this, and then you can play around with the ratio of.
With the way it's currently set up, you've got like whenever, so we can give a range of like the temperature from 0 to 0.5 or whatever, like this top, we give it the range, right, lower, and then where basically, so you have 1,000 agents, we do a uniform distribution across these 6 possibilities: 0, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5. Okay, so like 6 options spread across 1,000. What's that? That's like a bit under 200, 175 each or something. So 175 agents will be about temperature 0, 175 will be about temperature 0.1, and so on. So we're assigning it at the agent level. There's to get it at the. If you wanted to go, each column, if you were recast the agent as a group rather than agent and characteristics of that agent, if you did agent and individual agent profiles, having an individual temperature for each gets tough. You can give them a group temperature at the moment with the current setup, but that's not to say that you can't give each of those individuals within that group personality profiles or different profiles, right? An interesting thing that could be, you know, just to talk to Tony's point a bit about finding this, you know, what is the temperature value that best represents an autistic individual or an ADHD thinker, right? Like you can feed in to the context, the ADHD, you know, the characteristics, and then you know how best do we match that with, you know.
We need to talk really this out about it, because if you're able to cluster them into groups,
clustering.
Then we are very close to agent-based modeling, and then we can actually also start not just classifying through characteristics, but we can also maybe have a new way of building in the rules, like a rule-based system. Like, I mean, agent-based modeling is a rule-based system, so we can combine the large language model with rule-based, and we are able to cluster it into different groups within society, because then we can run a lot of those kind of. The society has always groups somehow, you know.
That was the underlying motivation for my newly formed teams.
Yeah, exactly.
Is how to optimize work.
And it's worth checking with Sean what he thinks whether it's possible.
How to optimize groups in the workplace.
Yeah.
But it could be players on a football field, Brendan.
It
could be in any group assignments.
You can do groups, but I think what I'm saying is more like you make things a bit easier by classification of groups, and then they interact with each other in a society.
Yes. Yeah. Which is exactly what goes on.
Yeah.
It's weird.
How you do that in business at the moment, of course, is you set up as many groups as you can, you get them to compete. Right? But that destroys people. You know, if there's 5 groups, there's going to be 3 groups of losers. Right? And that's detrimental to well-being. And here we're not going to destroy the members of the group.
Today it's having a hissy fit, so I actually need to go figure out what's going on. It might just be these inputs that I've sloppily put together, but stepping through, like, you know, we've come through with this idea of the temperature, and then, you know, playing around this idea of the max you know, the max retries and things like that. We get towards the top ends of the temperature, we have to think about the failures that are going to increase. Okay, so think about maybe pushing up your max number of retries.
I mean, with the temperature stuff you mentioned about, like, no divergent or autistic elements or whatever, could you actually just, you know, so you get a set of questions and you play around with the temperature, and then set of questions are actually those diagnostics questions of this thing, and then you just get the result and feed it back to, so you generate a result for the first stage of SurveyLM, and then you take the result of the first stage and feed it again, you know, in the second stage SurveyLM. So you run the results again from the first round, you know what I mean?
So run the diagnostics on the different calibrate or settings.
Yeah, for example, you give some tasks to 1,000 agents in the first round, and you play around, like, you know, with the different level of temperatures, and then you get the outcome of these agents, and you take that, and then you again have several of them to sort of diagnostic them as well again, and then whether you see, you know, those response from higher
double empathy problem.
It says some sort of propagation, you know, and you can keep going.
Yeah.
So
say you've got this is my interpretation, but like the double empathy thing is about the neurodivergence are a lot, like there's closer alignment between a neurodivergent talking to a neurodivergent. Okay, yes, that makes sense. There's a closer alignment between a neurotypical talking to a neurotypical, but you don't, the cross collaboration or cross communication is not as strong, right? Like double empathy problem, we can talk to our own groups basically. The connection here is that the first round you might be running diagnostics on people, yeah, and varying the temperature to get an understanding of like, okay, if I turn temperature up to 1, do I see more ADHD or whatever? Okay, but then when I feed it in the second go, also varying my temperature, and I'm assessing, okay, the results of that diagnostic test. If I'm changing the neurodiversity of the assessor, in a sense, that's what we're proxying, okay? That's where I went with it, but sorry.
Yeah, no. I was just thinking about, well, what does it mean by temperature in terms of like creativity and stuff, and how do you, what does it mean? Can you run it through some tests? Well, first the sort of traditional medical diagnostics tool, in terms of whether you see high temperature more resemble to those responses.
Types.
Types and stuff. But then I was also thinking about, does it make sense to, like, I'm trying to just utilize SurveyLM as creative as possible by having response generated in the first round, and feed in the second round, and feed in the third round.
So
I love the idea of like a neurodivergent assessing a neurodivergent.
You're able to identify, let's say, you do BICKLEY.
Yeah.
So you have this, you then see, for example, different levels of temperature, how many are openness, or how many
exactly. What is it
for each thing? So you have to test. So what do you do afterwards, the second round?
So that per se can inform you what high temperature translate into, traits.
Yes, but that's what you do already quickly. Why do you have several rounds?
Well, the second round is actually a different idea for something else. I was thinking also in relation of feedback.
Yes.
I had something in mind that was actually more apt for this.
I ruined it.
Process. Why we would do this propagation of results. I need to mull over that idea again. Not really, but it's again more the iterative process. That again, like for example, going with your idea of evolution, right? Then you can have, like, forget about the temperature for example. Like the first round would be, I suppose with the different questions, or
like the first one, you might be running these diagnostic tests. Like we're doing 1,000 individuals. Here's your diagnostic test. Are you, and trying to get a measure on the individuals themselves. Okay, but then at the same, then the next level of extraction is like, okay, here's the assessments that these agents did on this thing. Okay, these are the questions, the answers they've sort of provided or whatever, and almost. Yeah, do they align, or are they sort of consistent, or whatever? Like you're trying to like get a feel, I suppose, on a recent example is like I was going through a form with my parents, and I'm telling them about some stuff that I know is a symptom of something else, and they're like, okay, no, but that's normal. Everyone does that. So, well, you got it too then. Right? So the idea with the assessors, I don't know.
Well, I mean, the interesting thing is, like, if you think of mood disorders, can you, for example, create mood disorders with the agent? So you have the agent, and then you have the same agent, you change the temperature, you link it to this kind of, like hypomanic state, manic state, depressed state, or so, and then you actually, you feed in, they need to become creative. Like, for example, like we did with our grad application, but you put them in different temperatures, in different states, and then you observe what's the discovery process, and then you start, for example, not only the discovery but also the evaluation. Does the discovery make sense?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And then identify where is the optimal level of temperature, and when is somebody a good evaluator of the discovery, and when is somebody a good creator of the discovery in that sense.
On a similar note, but slightly different, with neurodivergent stuff, you could almost even conceptualize temperature as like the level of masking. Because like when neurodivergents mask, they're trying to fit as close as possible as what they think is most likely for a neurotypical to act. So they go to like in the manner of distribution.
That's very cool way.
And then as you like become less masked, you're kind of veering away from like what the normal like standard neurotypical
That's
acts.
cool.
But then they might go too far. Like if you completely unmask, you might not, like you said, you might not be able to like communicate with the neurotypicals effectively. So you might have these really cool ideas, but you might not be able to communicate them. So there might be like a sweet spot of like masking in that sense. As well.
And you guys are trying to remove bounded rationality boundaries.
Oh, wait.
Nice.
Okay.
That'd be good.
So and then like in terms of like
Outside of the square thinking,
Optimize.
norm.
Optimize a little more this
round one
Or
you get
not
measures,
ostracise
and
people
then
who think
that's
they're
with this
different.
sort of setting, and then you ask them, you feed, say first round my temperature was 0.5 and I answer my questions in that way. Next round I feed an answer from someone else who was, or the same agent that was 0.5 last round, now it's 0.1 this round.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
And then that's, okay, how would you answer the questions now? Do these still represent
It
your...
goes further because it says that you look at, for example, in terms of how close are you told us. That leads to acceptance or not. How do you deviate from the norm, or do you?
This is exciting because this has the possibilities if what you're saying is to dewire children.
Yes.
So we could maintain the 7-year-old neural connections. And if we did that, we know that society would be a better place. Because children don't fight.
Exactly.
Yeah, but then we'd have really fucking sticky memories. We'd remember everything.
Or we could go mad.
What you allow is to say, look, how can we handle Newton then? Yeah, that's the consequence. Like Newton was bipolar, and then how can you help him to take advantage of his creativity, but still control him to be
All the Teslas or whatever.
Maybe allocate less to alchemy and more to
Well, over history, we've locked these people up, right? A couple of them have slipped through, like Newton and a few others.
Exactly.
But these are creative thinkers, right? But we've locked them up because they thought stuff that we don't understand.
No, or they just, I mean.
Well, they didn't express it in the way.
Yeah, or they reach a stage where they write the Principia Mathematica, but then they spend 80% of the time doing the alchemy, because alchemy. I think he was probably a lot in the manic state when he was doing alchemy. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how can you control it? How can you balance it out a little bit so that you become more valuable for society as a scientist?
So our agents have not got to try and make gold out of lead, right?
Yeah. Not that far.
Yeah. So we're going, yeah. Back into this, I'm gonna just you would have seen me fumbling around with SurveyLM. I'm gonna figure out what was going on. I'll send out some results, and I'll send out the prompts and so on. But I suppose just sort of capturing some of these conversations going on, and we're sort of like getting towards the end finally with this workshop series. This idea of being able to, it's a new empirical tool, right, or landscape, like not just SurveyLM, that's what this one is about, but large language models in general, and creative ways to prompt these things. Fairly low code sort of environment allows for a lot of empirical science. So given that we've had all this training with the human data and the learning representations of human thoughts and so on in that data, you can start to open up that theory of mind and models of mind and get into these really nitty-gritty questions. And I promise you that what you said here today with the temperature stuff, like right here, and Rachel, that observation there, like I haven't heard that anywhere. So real cool shit when you start to think about, while there's a risk of humanizing AI or whatever, and I had this question on the weekend, yes, okay, cool, but it's basic, it's learned human patterns, okay, so it's really hard not to humanize it. But if we think about, these comparisons between how a human thinks and an AI thinks, and also, these ideas behind, disordered thinking and so on, maybe it gives you insights into the mechanisms of the model, and then hence feed that back into the mechanisms of the people that you're studying in the real world. There's a really good quote, or I forget who said it, but anyway, AI has been designed to a large extent in the eyes of this sort of like autistic individual, right? Like it's and we're uncomfortable with the way that it interacts and things like that. So maybe the reason that human AI collaboration is so far, there's such a gap, we've been designing this thing in the wrong way if we're looking for social optimization, right? Rather than just predictive optimization, whatever you want to call it. So cool to think about. Lots of work still to be done. Get in quick while the ethics is not, rather than when it's hot. So any other questions? Really keen to.
I have one. I haven't been getting information about where you're going with slides and presentations.
Oh, okay. Well, Jen, I'll get Jen. Yeah, get Jen.
I didn't get the invite.
Ah.
Today, unless.
Okay.
I think you sent it to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because this is really important, because I'm going to need this when I start coding it up.
Yeah, and there'll also be an opportunity with. Yeah. I'll pull them out. But with all of this, there will be, no doubt, like in the next week or two, the students off the back of this one, because we just got into it, but the students, particularly working with SurveyLM at the moment, I'll probably be in touch with just you guys about setting just a workshop again, just to go work through some stuff together. And anyone else that wants to come along, we'll open that up via Jen to anyone else that's attended. And again, thank you very much for everyone who has attended over these last few weeks or months. And yeah, cheers.